from the land of mystery, where dreams become reality, always listening to stories from the past, the present, and the future. This is Back to Your Story.
What's up, guys? Thank you so much for tuning in. I want to talk about a sponsor today that it just means a lot to me. It's called Jupiter. They make some of the highest quality CBD on the market, and I would know. I've tried so many brands, but these guys are special because they focus on alleviating stress. They are also USDA organic. They are single strain origin. You know, they only use the flower. The testing is phenomenal, and they're offering you guys something special. It's called the Jupiter Journey. It's a 2-week supply for $19, and then after that, you guys will use my code to receive $10 off. The code is Storytime. Yep, that makes sense, right? So yeah, get the Jupiter Journey today, $19. Go to getjupiter.com, and then off your next order, use Storytime for the $10 off. I'll put all the information in the show notes. All right, here we go. So I have a very special guest on today. It's Matt Lindley, cybersecurity specialist, just fucking wizard, man. We talked about life, love, psilocybin, LSD, blockchain, crypto, this, that, and the other. This dude and I have been through so many things. So let's get to it.
It's definitely an interesting story for sure.
Oh, by far.
That and,
absolutely. Yeah. Actually, let's just start off with that real quick. Why don't you tell the listeners how we first met?
So let's see. Where do I start? It was I was getting my hair cut at this. It was a salon inside the mall in Santa Clarita, Valencia Mall.
Yep.
And I'd gone there, I think, once or twice before, just kind of a walk-in, whoever was available. And one day I needed a haircut, went in there, and the person that was cutting my hair, I don't know what the deal was, but there's something going on there. Maybe some substance,
a little bit of Xanax.
Yeah, maybe a little high. But when she cut my hair, she put a massive, like 1-inch almost hard part in my hair with the razor, and just completely screwed it up. I mean, she was dropping things. She was a little fucked up.
She was slightly intoxicated, needless to say. A 1-inch hard part. So
after that happened, I just I don't even know if I really said anything when I just kind of wanted to make sure it was as bad as I thought it was. The funny part is I had a business meeting the next day.
No, you did.
With my CEO. We were meeting a friends of his to, we were going after their business, but he personally knew these people.
Oh, shit.
So I show up with,
the worst
ridiculous haircut, and all I could do was just kind of laugh and
Did you call it out? Did you say?
I didn't in the business meeting. I did with my boss at the time. I said, look, I'm really sorry. I got my hair cut by a lawnmower.
Yes, you did.
But it was fine.
Yeah.
Not a big deal. So, but I did call the owner of the salon, and I just said, look, you may want to, look after this person, check her out. I think she was probably not in a state of mind where she should be cutting hair.
She definitely wasn't.
And what she did is she hooked me up with 3 free haircuts. Damn. And she recommended, not even recommended, she said, you have to, sit down with Brock. He is, he's incredible. He's an incredible stylist. And I did. And that's made an appointment with you. You cut my hair. And from there, it was like, best buds.
Dude, that's so freaking crazy. Yeah. I mean, to think that you were about to go into this important meeting. You sit down, you get a haircut. This girl totally fucks your hair up. And you push forward through it. And I mean, you just, out of the niceness, I don't even know the niceness of your heart, but you called, you said, explained to Kim of Salon Kate, freaking amazing. If you're in the Valencia area, check out her salon. And she made it right by giving you 3 haircuts. Now, I do appreciate the kindness and things that you said, but for me, looking back on what happened to you was probably the best haircut you ever got. And what I mean by that is it allowed us to foster a relationship. So it was the worst haircut, but
yeah. And who knows, I mean, that was kind of I'd gone there a couple times.
Yeah.
It was, it was at the mall. I have 2 kids, so sometimes we go hang out by the mall. So that was probably, eventually I may have sat down with you. And I think that's all it would have taken, is getting me, sitting down with you and getting our haircut, because I forget where we started. Maybe politics,
probably.
Maybe, eventually got into crypto.
Definitely.
and just from there
it just freaking grew.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. I mean, being able to foster such a long relationship and the things that we've gone through. Right. So thank you so much for starting off with such a funny story. But I want to dive a little bit deeper back into your past first, because Back to Your Story is really about sharing people the story of how they became who they are. And for you, I look at you as one of my friends that does his life on his own terms. And I think that's really important. You have 2 amazing kids, and you have a good job, and you have just always been just so kind to me, my family, people in general. And when I think of a person, one of my friends that I look up to most, it's you by far. I look at you as like my big brother. I swear you and my older brother have so many common commonalities that it just kind of warms my heart. And I think that really, for me, when you sat down, it was just kind of instantaneous. It was love at first sight. Getting off topic.
I could jive with that, yeah.
Where'd you grow up, man?
Yeah, so I was born in a small city called Madera.
Okay.
Grew up until I was about 7 years old in an even smaller town called Oakhurst. I think there was maybe 1,500 people who lived there. In fact, I remember moving away, and I think a year later talking to a friend that I'd grown up with there over the phone, just kind of touching base, hey, how are things going? He said, "Oh, we got." We got our first subway. And in my mind, my 8-year-old mind, I'm like, underground transportation, that's wild. Like, but then it finally clicked.
Yes.
Wasn't, the sharpest tool at that point. But yeah, so they, it was a really small town, grew up on 40 acres.
Wow.
And I remember, taking walks on our property and finding, Indian articles, obsidian arrowheads, mortar and pestles. I mean, it was a cool place to grow up.
Yeah, for sure.
There'd snow there. During the winter, I think we're at about 5,500 feet elevation.
Oh, for sure.
So we got a little bit of snow, and, growing up, we grew up on skis, put skis on, would ski down the hill, walk back up, and do it again,
cool.
Bring the dish. So it was neat. Definitely spent a lot of time, outside.
For sure.
We had a lot of cats and dogs on the property, and
Just a big old bunch of land, whole bunch of kids, or cats, animals, things like that.
Yeah.
Being able to ski, find arrowheads. I mean, that's really awesome, and a very unique story. For me, I definitely didn't have any of that. So if I ever had the ability to find cool, unique arrowheads growing up, I definitely would have kept a couple of them. By chance, do you have any of them?
I'd have to probably look pretty deep, but I wouldn't put money on being able to find anything left over. But
that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
What about after that? How old were you when you left there?
I think I was about 7 years old when we moved away. My parents got divorced, so that's when we moved. My dad moved to Irvine, and then we moved to Irvine with my mom. We kind of predominantly stayed with her.
Yeah.
A big part of us, I think, moving away is my mom saw that, there weren't a lot of opportunities for us growing up in a small town, and that was, for her. And she's definitely, I think, one of my personal heroes, just because, she's every decision she's ever kind of made, I see as I'm older now how much she put us, her kids, me and my siblings, ahead of everything else, and really just gave us, all the opportunities in the world. And so this was one of them, right?
That's so cool.
Moved away, single mom. She was working as a district attorney at the time.
Wow.
And so, we were kind of latchkey kids at that point, getting ourselves to school, getting home, making, our own
Doing your
meals.
thing.
I learned how to make killer bean burritos.
Yes, you did. Legendary.
Yes,
Legendary.
yes. Because that's what you do when you're, trying to figure it out.
Hell yeah.
Bean burritos.
Bean burritos, baby.
But yeah, so it was, and then grew up in, Irvine, South Orange County area for the most part.
Nice. You know what you said about your mom being a heroine and just kind of fucking doing it, really putting you guys forward. The first thing I thought of was you. It is a strong resemblance to who you are as an individual, always putting your kids first. And that has passed down very strongly to you, from your mother to you. And I would assume that one day both of your kids will say the same thing about their father. And I think that's so important, being a child, going through a divorce. I don't know what that's like, but that I lost my father at an early age. Mm-hmm. But still, it doesn't matter. Going through a divorce and then, moving to Irvine, figuring things out, it's just a strong resemblance to who you are. So going through all of that, if you can look back at the divorce, and I don't mean to kind of pry into your past, but it's just some questions, right? What was that like as a child? Was it hard?
It's funny, I almost anticipated this question, and I was thinking about it as you were dialoguing. I don't know if I have any truly, powerful feelings around it. I mean, it was hard at the time. I remember crying when I was hearing about it, and I think. I look at it as, it's just, it's part of it, and you work with what you have. I think in, divorce in many cases, a lot of times it's an option that is for the better. Right. And
Yes.
in our case, I think obviously, it was for whatever reason.
Absolutely.
And so, I'm bummed that I don't have the relationship with my dad that I do with my mom, because, but at the same time, I think, much of that was just because of her, dedication and her commitment to, making sure that, we had that relationship, and that she, looked out for us in that way. And not to, my dad was was a great dad, great father. But, just not in the same capacity, and didn't, I think, put us, in the same priority as, my mom did. So that's the reason
I get
the
it.
relationship.
No. Trust me, I get it. And there was something that you said is sometimes it's for the better, right?
Yeah.
And I can only tap into my own personal experiences growing up and looking through the shit my parents put my sister and brother and myself through. It would have been a lot better if they got divorced, right? And I think that a lot of times couples will hold on to this fictional thing that, like, we need to be together for the kids. And it's like, no, if it's not working, then it's not working. And that's going to directly correlate and pass down to your kids and the things that they see and the things that they do later on in their life.
It's funny. I think about this, and I think about some of the things that I've subscribed to, just that are like cultural or social, kind of status quos, expectations. And the older I get, I realize more and more, like, you have to ask yourself, like, why am I doing these things, and really kind of critically think about it versus just going with the flow. And going back to something you said before, which was interesting, and that's, just kind of setting your own life, making your own life. And I think the more I break, I ask myself, what am I doing and why am I doing it?
Absolutely.
The more I can, I think, correct and make the things happen that I really truly want, versus fitting into a mold or a path that Absolutely. I probably don't really want.
No,
much,
for sure. As you and I both know, life's a blink of an eye, man. It's truly a blink of an eye. And there are so many people in this world that kind of just go through the monotony of the everyday bullshit of life. And listen, everyone's story is different, right? Everyone's story is different, but I wish that more people would take their head out of their sand and realize, like, this life is all you fucking got, and you might as well make the best of it. And I get it. Everyone has their struggles. Struggles are real. But if we just kind of take our heads out and kind of really follow our gut instinct instead of our heart, our gut instinct, maybe people's lives would be different. You know, and obviously that's not everyone's life because there's billions and billions of people on this planet. I get it. But I don't know. It's just philosophy I've had my entire life.
Yeah.
And I try to surround myself with people that are like-minded. And so when you came into my life, I was like, this is the person that's part of my tribe, my crew. You know?
Yeah. You know, it's funny. We have, I feel very lucky to be able to, exercise some of these things that I want to do that maybe are unique and different, and taking, I feel lucky that I can even take some of these risks, because not everyone can do it. No. Right. And that's something that I think is important to recognize is, there are people that they do not have the ability to take the kinds of risks that, I am able to shape my life the way I want it.
Of course.
But the risks, they've paid off for the most part. Some have failed. If you fail, you learn, you grow.
Of course.
I had a business. We can get into that. Yeah. I had to shut down the business. And it was a humbling experience and a really valuable lesson. You know?
No, I get that. You brought it up, so let's just talk about it.
Yeah.
What was the business that you started?
So I started, and there's probably a fair amount of backstory to this that would add context. My background is in IT and consulting, with I would say a focus on cybersecurity.
Yes.
After living in Orange County, and I was married at the time, I moved to Portland, the Pacific Northwest area.
Nice.
And we can, touch on that again at a later point. It is a really cool area. I love that area. This was before we had kids. Ended up having our first child out there. Then a couple years later moved back. And when we moved back, I landed at this company. It was call it a managed services company. They do, IT support for businesses. Landed there and eventually, started and ran their cybersecurity practice.
Fantastic.
So, built it from the ground up, built a team, developed all the services, all that stuff. And so after, a fair amount of time doing that, and it was just kind of the right time. I mean, anyone who's picked up a newspaper or watches the news, knows cybersecurity is kind of a hot
Huge.
topic right now, and has been for a little bit. But, I thought to myself, I think it's a combination of things. I think it's me personally. I like, I've always worked in entrepreneurial type settings, even if it wasn't my own business. Almost every company I worked for was either a startup, a small company where I, worked with the founder, where, I'm kind of helping, grow things in different ways. So that's just, what I think brings me a lot of happiness is, creating and executing. And so I ran that for a while, and then a certain point thought to myself, well, either, I don't really have the level of control that I want to, exercise some of these services. And, also I felt like, I if I did it myself, it would be a lot more work, definitely realized that going into business.
It's a lot of work,
but, I'd be able to also, have a lot more reward associated. So I decided to, start my own business. And that was January of, I want to say 2017, was married at the time. And this is one thing that I think, definitely, led to ultimate demise of the business. But 2017, mid to late, it was also when I started going through a divorce of my own. So that was tough. And then, by the end of 2018, realized that I needed to, I needed to make a decision, and I made that decision to leave the business, and it happened to be one of the best decisions I made, because I'm extremely happy where I'm at now. I feel blessed to have kind of landed at the path I've landed, for sure.
It's so incredible, and I say this to a lot of people. In life, we're going to be faced with many decisions. You can either go left or you can go right. And some people decide to go left, some people decide to go right. And it's understanding at that current moment in the time of your life to take all the bullshit that's at the top of your brain, maybe feelings that you have towards a business, relationship, whatever it is, and pull everything out and look at it from a macro perspective, right? If it's a business or a relationship or whatever it is, how has that relationship or business been going? Is it flatlining? Is it slowly going up? Is it going up, down, up, down, up, down? And if you can look at it from that bird's eye view and okay, all right, well, some days go up, some days go down, but if from that bird's eye view, it's slowly going up, well, then you probably know your answer. But a lot of times people will take a lot of these feelings, these rushes to judgment and say, I got to do this. I got to follow it through. I got to see it through, when maybe that wasn't the best decision. And for you, that business, pulling out of it, was probably very hard. It was a lot of time, everything, money and relationship and this and that and the other. But by pulling out of it, look where you're at today. Yeah. And so you made the smart decision. You made the right decision. So kudos to you.
Yeah, it was tough. You know, sure. It was, you know, that, I mean, there was definitely some, you know, like I wasn't happy. You know, I was going through a divorce, which, you know, those are never easy or fun. And, you know, something that I put a lot of sweat equity into and money, you know, just making that decision. And so, yeah. Another thing we'll probably get to, but I think, one of the things that really helped pull me out of that and make that decision, were mushrooms.
There we go.
I gotta say that I had a profound experience.
Absolutely.
That I'm thankful for.
No,
because it helped me. It helped me align things in a way and look at things in a way that almost and it wasn't instant, but you know, pretty much pulled me out of. I think, you know, one of the darker periods of you know, my life where, you know, not dark, but just,
I get it.
Just, you know, I wasn't happy.
No, for sure. I mean,
I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't make a decision. I couldn't pull out of it. And, you know, that was a really amazing tool that, you know, I think helped change my life for the better.
Absolutely. You know, if you use these types of, these mushrooms, psilocybin mushrooms, as a tool, you and me are both big believers that they can be a very strong tool that can help you out through things in your life. For me, mushrooms came to me later on in my life. When I was younger, I experienced them and it was never a good experience, but I wasn't at the right place, the right time, the right mindset. Psilocybin mushrooms should not be used when you're a kid. You know, your frontal cortex is still developing, our brains, everything is still developing until we're almost 25 years old. But when I became, you know, older, and my late 20s, early 30s, I started experimenting with them. And by far, mushrooms have saved my marriage. And what I mean by that is my wife, Alyssa, and I, we've been together 16 years. We just celebrated our 16th year together. High school sweethearts.
That's wild. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, it is. It's insane. But she's a very talented makeup artist. And about 3 years ago, I was at this point where we've been together for 13 years, we're married, let's have kids, you know, and we've talked about kids a lot. And I was at this point in my career, I'm like, all right, I'm ready. And at the time, I was speaking from one point of view, not both of our points of view. And I was getting everyone excited. I made her believe that we should have a kid. And I was telling everyone, oh, we're going to have a kid at the beginning of next year and blah, 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 blah. And I remember only thinking about myself at that moment for that year when I said, all right, it's time, right? No real sit down, no conversation, nothing. It was just like, oh, I'm ready, so you better be ready too. And we went to Disney World. This was 3 years ago. And we were at Disney World, and like my buddy and I do every single year, we eat some mushrooms and kind of go on this spiritual trip at Animal Kingdom. We always have a fucking awesome time. And Alyssa came along with us that time. And I remember going through the trip, and all of a sudden, all these ideas and thoughts started pouring into my brain. And why I really like psilocybin is because it really allows you to dive deep inside your brain in ways that I normally I mean, I think a lot, right? I constantly am thinking, but this is so different. And I remember thinking, I was like, holy shit. And I started getting overwhelmed and I started crying. And Alyssa turned to me and she goes, what's wrong, Brock? And I was like, Alyssa, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And she goes, what the fuck is wrong? This is like out of nowhere, right? Yeah. And I was like, babe, I'm so sorry. I've been pushing you.
It clicked.
It clicked. Yeah. I was like, I'm so sorry. I've been pushing you to have kids. I was like, she's a makeup artist and she has been on this trip. She's fucking awesome. She's been killing it, but she just had gotten into the union. And so literally what I was asking my wife to do was just get into the union, which is like just getting your doctorate, right?
Yeah,
like the top, right?
And then give up her purpose.
And then give up her fucking purpose.
Yeah.
And I totally did not think about any of that. And why I say my marriage is because what happens a lot of times in marriages is one of the couples will follow their dream and the other one will kind of take care of the kids and do that shit, right? And things are changing now, right? Both couples are working and all that shit. But put that stuff aside, just my relationship. I was literally asking her to have kids right as you made your freaking goal. No, what's really the smart thing to do is make that goal, do it for, 2-3 years so you make a strong name for yourself, then step away for a little bit of time to have a kid so then you can jump back into it.
Right.
And I sit here today and tell you on this freaking podcast in front of you that I promise you we would have gotten divorced 10 years later because after our kids were slightly a little bit older, she would have started to look back at her own life and been like, well, what the fuck? You followed your goal. You followed your dream.
Yeah.
I literally was right to meet mine and then nothing. And so I got chills as I'm saying this because psilocybin, if used for the right time, the right tool, just like for you.
It's amazing. It's almost, I see it as a tool. And there's, I think lately been a lot more, scientific research into this stuff, in a clinical capacity and looking at, the benefits on so many different levels and layers. Definitely a tool, almost like, people who are really practice that meditation, to get to a state where they can even unpack things that your conscious state of mind has a hard time doing. Psilocybin, mushrooms, they give you access to be able to, look at things from different angles that you wouldn't be able to look at, without either a ton of practice or, or at all. So, for me, I think, and I remember the experience that did it. It was, when people talk about, how, taking a hero dose, I think they call it, or a level 5.
Yep.
It's losing your ego.
Yes.
And I remember, and it was something I did alone because I think that's the only way you can therapeutically, I don't want to say that's not the only way. For me, it was a therapy session. So I did it alone. And I remember, having this feeling that was so powerful where I laughed, cried, was thankful, was, could almost see beauty in, the universe and living things and nature that I can't even describe. And then all of a sudden I started thinking about my life and what I wanted and what was important. And it was just so amazing how quickly I was able to organize and understand I'm doing this. This isn't the right time. I'm not happy. Just do it. It's going to be hard, get through it, but this is the right decision. And it was after that I started, it was literally a couple days later that I started making the moves to shut down the business. I was looking for other opportunities, starting to network, in different ways. And,
that's incredible.
And we'll touch on what I'm getting into now, but, or what I'm doing professionally right now, but it's, it's incredible. It's amazing that it led me here.
It is. I mean, you and I have gone through a lot of journeys together, and really, when I was going through kind of my biggest spiritual moments with psilocybin, trying to figure things out, we were kind of going through things together. And by far, psilocybin, LSD, DMT, they have strong proponents to it that allow you to unlock parts of your brain that you normally don't use. Another one for me, I think we've talked about this before, was DMT. Earlier in the beginning part of 2019, I was kind of going through a lot mentally. I suffer from my fibromyalgia, my back issues, and I a year prior to that, I literally almost died. I was in ICU for like 3 weeks.
It was scary.
Fucking scary. It was terrible. And I remember getting out of the hospital and I just didn't understand why I just couldn't understand why I was alive. It just, nothing made sense. And it lasted for a year. And I remember at my darkest point in my life, I was contemplating suicide, and I was just so fucking just fed up with everything going on, and I couldn't understand why I was here. And I remember my friend had offered me DMT, and I never knew when I was ready. But something inside me said, Brock, if at any time you're gonna do it now. And so I called him up, and we set the area, and it was just him and I. And I remember going through that experience, taking the first hit, the second hit, the third hit. And I went to a place that I've never been before. I've done a lot of hallucinogens in my life, but I've never been to this place. And I remember laying back, and I looked up, and all I could see was these eyes looking down at me. And for some reason, it felt like it was my dad. And I started having this conversation with him. And simply put, he was just telling me, Brock, it's not your time. We all go through hard shit. Like, it's just not your time. It's not your fun. Don't fucking give up. You have so much to live for. And I remember coming out of it, and I was the most scared, the most vulnerable, but at the same time, pieces of the puzzle finally fucking clicked.
Yeah.
And I started therapy a week later. I have to tell you today, not a fucking chance would I ever. 4 months later, I got promoted to the top position in my fucking company. The healthiest I've ever been, fucking working out, doing all these things that I've never done in my entire life. But at that moment, and I tell you, man,
It's a pivot.
It was a fucking pivot.
Yeah.
It was used as a tool. Yeah. And so as we're sitting here today, we've all gone through these experiences. And I'm not saying these things are for everybody. I'm just sharing my own experiences.
Yeah. I mean, just the more I kind of read about these tools in this capacity, the more I believed that, if you treat them as a tool,
exactly,
then they can be very powerful tools. One of the things that I think I read recently. So one of the things that is kind of happening at a physiological level with DMT is that it turns on your beta waves. But it's basically your sleep. It makes you. It's basically puts you in a lucid dream, right? So you're in that state of mind where you're dreaming, but you're wide awake. Mm-hmm. And so that's why you have such, one of the reasons why you have such intense, visuals, but it's also part of your brain. You're able to then, that's the tool. You're able to look at things in just a crazy way and correlate them and, bring things together. And to me, dreams are super fascinating. I remember watching, this is a Nova special, I don't know how many years ago, so I'm not going to be able to, I think, articulate it to its what it deserves. But one of the things that they were talking about, so it was a study where they took, 3 groups of people. First group, they didn't let, and I know there's different stages of sleep, but if we were to kind of break it down in 2 main stages, you kind of your deep sleep and then your, first stage of sleep. And then I don't know, I can't talk about it articulately, but what they did is they woke the people up before they got to that second, deep sleep stage. And then they looked at, the brain waves, what's happening. And then in the study, they put people on a video game. It was like a skiing video game. So you're going down a hill, doing the moguls and all that stuff. Yes. And what to me was really fascinating, and then when they explained it, it totally made sense, is that the first stage of sleep is you're organizing your thoughts, right? Basically you're hitting the play button on what you recorded throughout the day. and then organizing. The second stage of sleep is you're actually introducing new scenarios. You're doing creative things. You're taking what you've organized, what actually happened, and almost playing simulations against, like, if I did this differently, what will happen? And in the study, the first group that they woke up before they got to that stage of sleep, they almost all didn't do as well in the ski game versus the people who actually got that are their stage of sleep. And, it may have been because they're a little tired, but when they also looked at the data on what's happening, they realized that second stage of sleep is so incredibly important. And, and you look at like even sleeping medication and stuff like that, which kind of prevents people from, if you, there's just so much data and science on sleep on how important, that is. And
it's
even
so
with,
important.
Cleaning your brain from cancerous, cells and
absolutely.
It's just sleep fascinates me.
No, it does. It does.
But I think with the point I was trying to make with the hallucinogens, it's almost kind of, introducing that element of, sleep where your brain is able to just do these incredible things and you're able to, like remember them. And
yes. It's really incredible. There's a really short documentary on Netflix. It's the Explained series, and they have one on psychedelics, and they have scans of a brain that's just sober, right, on no drugs, and then they have a brain that's on hallucinogens. It's either LSD or psilocybin, and you look at the way that the brain talks to certain parts of the brain when it's completely sober, and then you take the brain that is on the hallucinogen, the LSD or psilocybin, and parts of the brain that never talk to one another are now connecting in the most fascinating ways. Which then leads me to believe, well, if you're able to do that, right, in these times when you're under hallucinogens, what parts of your everyday life can you unlock and what shit can you go through? And that's exactly what happened to you with your story with your business, me with my relationship. And that's why before they put, the ban on drugs, LSD, during the 60s, they were doing deep studies with therapists, just like shamans would with ayahuasca, down in South America, take people through these, shamanic rituals, right, to really purge the mind, the body, and the soul. Go through PTSD, depression, and different shit. They would do the same thing in the States, but with a therapist, and they were finding that the percentage rate just with addiction, let's put alcohol or cigarettes, right? If you had I don't know the type of stuff that they had back in the 60s, but the rate of people quitting for 1 year out was fucking fascinating.
Yeah. And I think even just, folks suffering from depression, like condensing, how much, what would take, a year's worth of therapy could be done with, 1 or 2, psychedelic sessions.
Absolutely. Well, look at me, right? I'm like, this is the most open I've been about it, right? But I'm so open about it now because I look at my life back then and it's such a short period of time, right? But it's changed my entire life, right? Yeah. And at these key moments in my life, especially those 2 that I just shared, it's been so pivotal. I can't even believe it. Even with us, when we went on the camping trip, right? I'm sitting here vaping right now, but I used to smoke cigarettes. I smoked a fuck ton, and I quit like 8 years ago, and then I started up a couple years ago, and we went on that trip. And when we went up to, where the hell did we go?
Alabama Hills.
Alabama Hills.
Camping, right at the base of Mount Whitney. It's beautiful.
It's fucking gorgeous.
Such a cool trip,
And I remember I couldn't stop quitting cigarettes. For some reason I thought I was in control and I could quit, and then just I couldn't fucking do it, right? And when we went through that LSD experience, I was like, I'm fucking done smoking cigarettes, right? I didn't say that I wouldn't vape again, but I said I was done smoking cigarettes. Well, I haven't had a cigarette since.
Yeah,
that was it. Fuck that. That is it. I have no desire to smoke a cigarette. Nothing. It was like It was literally like a witch or magician just sucked it out of me, right? Yeah. And it was incredible. And I think that I really wanted to, and I was ready. And I'm actually going to be doing the same exact thing at the end of this month. I'm sick and tired of vaping, right? I'm just done. And after I go through this big event called ISSC, that following weekend, I'm going to go through an experience by myself, do a strong dose of psilocybin and a dose of DMT the next day, kind of double it down. And I truly believe by the end of that weekend, I won't be vaping anymore, you know, and it's just tools that we use to get us along the way that can really unlock different parts of our brain.
Yeah.
So it's
really fascinating, you know, and just how they're looked at in society, you know.
Absolutely.
Definitely have a bad rap.
Oh my gosh,
for most people. Yeah.
But who would have thought that Denver and Oakland would have decriminalized it, right?
Yeah. That's already happened?
I mean, I believe so. I could be wrong. So if I'm wrong, I do apologize.
I know Portland's pretty, you know, soon behind it, or Oregon.
Absolutely. I mean, we're on this way where, you know, the internet has brought a couple things, really good and bad, right? You can say either or, but it's brought a lot of information, and it's opened the eyes up to many, many people. And so we're really at this pivotal time in this generation where we are saying, you know what, fuck you to the generations before us. We need to be living by our own standards. Now, does that mean everything's going to change? Absolutely not. But just with the idea that, you know, psilocybin can be decriminalized, what the fuck?
Well, I think it goes back to, you know, what I was saying earlier is instead of subscribing to the same old, you know, program, like let's you know, let's be critical thinkers about it. Like let's why are we doing this?
Yes.
You know, who does it benefit? Who does it hurt? And what are the benefits and what are the negative aspects, you know? Because for everything there are both sides.
Of course.
But it's just, it's wild to me that in even our lifetime that, you know, marijuana went from, you know, being you know, even when we were kids, like probably some parts in Nevada, like, you know, you'd spend a long time in jail, to now where, you know, right off of my exit off the freeway to get to my house, there's, I think, a 60-acre, you know, hemp farm.
It's just insane. It's literally insane. I remember as a kid looking at High Times and always dreaming and wishing to go to Amsterdam because that's where cannabis was, you know, allowed. And to now have 10 or 11 states become recreationally legal and like 30 plus become medicinally legal. I mean, we're in the next phase 5-10 years from now max where it will become federally legal.
Right.
Who would have thought, right? If you just jumped back a generation, people were getting locked up left and right
and
for
all
a
the
plant.
families are destroyed.
It's insane. Yeah. I mean, just think about it. You know, if you're just selling a little bit of grass, right, and you get locked up for all of this time, not only does that affect you, but it affects your family, affects if you have kids, right? And it's literally a plant that has a lot of amazing benefits. And I'm not saying that it doesn't. Like if you are prone to schizophrenia and you start, yes, that could be early onset. But as a whole, right, a few thousand people die a year from Excedrin or Tylenol, whatever it is, right? Does that mean it's bad? No, absolutely not. If it's used correctly, it can help out a lot.
Right.
Shit, I get headaches all the time. Excedrin helps me, right? So, and cannabis is definitely a lot better for so many different aspects. So to really see this pivotal shift, it is very sad to see what it's done to the past. But, if we really can make this change for the future, I think that we can be on the right path with these certain hot topics.
Yeah, no doubt.
So kind of jumping back a little bit, getting back to your story, and we'll come back to other things for sure. So you were up in Oregon, right? Was this before or after you had kids?
So I had my first son in Oregon, and he was born really early. So my wife at the time, her water broke at 26 weeks, out of the 40 week, period. And then we were in the hospital for 3 weeks. And then he was delivered at 28 weeks and, some change.
That'd be scary.
And he weighed 3 pounds, 2 ounces, when he was born, and then went down to 2 pounds, 14 ounces. He lose a little bit of weight normally. and just, tiny. Spent 2 months in the NICU, was never on a ventilator, just all things considered, did incredible. And it's amazing to me to just think about how far we've come, even in the last decade in this area. The scientific improvements in, neonatal care is just, it blew my mind having gone through that experience and then understanding just how far it's come. And, in a time period of if this would have happened 10, 20, maybe 30 years ago, it could have been a much, much, much different outcome.
Yeah.
So I listened to a podcast the other day. This is it's one of my favorite podcasts called 99% Invisible. And they just do a lot of investigative journalistic, stories. One of them was called the Infantorium.
Okay.
And I didn't know this. And so apparently around the turn of the century, there's no such thing as a NICU. There's no such thing as an incubator.
Serious?
What happened was this a doctor, and I'm gonna screw up some of the elements because I think I was distracted listening to some of the details. But basically, what would happen is if your child was born prematurely, they set up these sideshows at the World Fair and carnivals, where this doctor had, basically started learning and, creating these incubators because they saw that it was actually saving these, children's lives. God. But the hospitals wouldn't support them. Doctors said, no, this is pseudoscience. They wouldn't get on board. And so what you'd have is almost like a reality show where people, and even doctors would, if you had a child that was born at a certain stage, you'd say, we can't help you here, go to the World Fair. They tell you to go to the World Fair, and almost like a reality show,
what
people would show up every week and see, like, they track their favorite baby. Like, how's this baby doing? Is this baby surviving? It's wild. Like this was the turn of the last century.
Not that long ago. What, one person ago?
It took, I think, 30 or 40 years before hospitals finally got on board and said, oh, like we should start doing this.
Gosh.
And the doctor, I forget his name. I'm not going to remember, but the person who, and I don't even think he was a real doctor, but he had a passion for this. And I think a big part of it was he realized, like, he was saving babies' lives, he was saving lives. And
for sure.
And so he got pretty big and was even lending them to, some early adopting doctors, off the World Fair season.
That's incredible.
Lending his inventory because, for free, because he, again, realized that this was so important. So it's just, it's interesting to think that, and let's just say 100 years ago.
Yeah.
100 years ago, my son was born like that, he would have never survived.
No, not at all.
Not a chance.
Not a chance.
And now, he's thriving.
That's incredible.
So,
Just to think that the ingenuity of this one man, he wouldn't take no for an answer. So he brings it to the World Fair. I mean, imagine if they started doing surgeries and shit like that at our World's Fair, the county fair, right? It's like, it wouldn't even be, it would be nuts.
The grassroots expertise.
Exactly. But that's like our generation. And I don't mean, for sure. That's like our generation's Elon Musk, right? So Elon Musk said, you guys aren't doing rockets correctly. You guys aren't doing cars correctly. So I'm going to do it on my own, right? And this is how I'm going to do it, right? So it's like that same thought process. Well, fuck you guys. If you're not going to listen or you're not going to step out of the box, well, then I'm going to do it my way, right? And if your son was born 100 years ago, the chances of him living were slim to none, probably none, right?
Yeah.
And going through that, that had to really be a horrific experience. I mean, being a father, this is your first kid, comes out a few pounds. It's not what a normal baby would look like when they come out. So just that, and then you have to be in the hospital for months. What was that like?
It's wild. So first of all, first child, I think I have all the control in the world as far as planning the birthing experience, right? So I think that's kind of a little bit of the comic relief in this, is that maybe tragic comedy, but you realize, like, you don't have control over this. Like, great, make a plan. That's important. Come up with some of the things that you think are important to make it because it is a beautiful experience, can be and should be a beautiful experience.
Yes.
And even in the case of my son, it was still a beautiful experience. But that was lesson number one, because we had a whole, like, water birth, we had a doula, we had all, wanted to go all natural, no drugs.
Oh my God.
And it was as opposite as can be an emergency, cesarean. We wanted to do the whole delayed cord clamping, to make sure the placenta can get all the, vital nutrients and just all this stuff. So, but it was definitely tough. I remember, it took me, I think, a day before I finally broke down and just started, bawling, like crying.
For sure.
Cause I usually I'm pretty even keeled person in general.
Yes, you are.
But I remember the point where I was sitting outside and I just felt like it finally got to me. It was so overwhelming. I didn't know, it was the fear of the unknown, not knowing, what's going to happen next, and probably element of lack of sleep. And I remember just breaking down and bawling on a bench outside at the hospital, and then, picking myself, composing myself, and walking back in. And sometimes you forget how good it feels to cry. Like after a good cry.
Yeah, it feels.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I have another story about a good cry I had on an airplane after reading a book.
Did you really?
Yeah, we'll jump to that in a minute. So it was, I think the other thing that went well for us is we were at an amazing hospital. This was believe it or not, in Salmon Creek, Washington.
Salmon Creek,
it's just north of the Columbia River, nice. Across the border from Oregon, in just north of Vancouver, Washington. I didn't know there was a Vancouver, Washington until I moved there. I actually built a house there. That was another fun experience.
Oh shit! I had no idea about that.
Yeah. And so Salmon Creek, this hospital, they had, I think some of the best, some of the top experts in the nation in the neonatal, unit. They had private rooms. They just got it was my son was $1 million birth.
Wow.
It was over $1 million, and I paid I think $3,000 out of pocket for it.
Thank God for insurance.
Circumstantially, and had some of the best insurance at that time with the company I was working on. So that when you're going through something that crazy, the last thing you want to have to worry about is this covered? What's this going to do to me financially? That's the last thing you want to worry about. And I was really fortunate to have good insurance and be at a good facility.
Oh man, imagine if you didn't.
Yeah.
Oof. But you made it through.
Yeah. So that was crazy. Yeah. I think I mentioned 2 months in the NICU.
Yeah.
He came home on my birthday.
Yeah, that's
July
a great
13th.
birthday present.
Yes, yeah.
Gosh.
Came home on my birthday. So that was cool.
And how old is he now?
Grayson is 7 years old.
That was 7 years ago.
In first grade. So
congratulations.
It seems like, eons ago. And then it also kind of seems like yesterday.
In reality, it was yesterday, but I can understand eons ago and just going through that traumatic experience.
Yeah.
And something you said is you are fortunate that you did have good insurance. It was $3,000 for $1 million tab. Imagine all the parents out there going through something very similar, and this probably happens every single day, that have shitty insurance or no insurance.
And what was frustrating is looking at some of the bills, and and I remembered some of these visits. The doctors would walk in. They'd have a 5-minute conversation and you'd get billed like $3,000 for that. God. And I was, there's some broken
for sure
shit going on.
Absolutely. 3 minutes, the 5 minutes, 10 minutes, $3,000. Like, are you fucking kidding me? It's great that, your baby and Grayson is alive and he's doing fantastic, but it is absurd. It's really absurd.
That's definitely and I know a lot of people share that frustration with, I just got an email today, with my healthcare costs, hiked up $400 a month.
No, that's just fucking insanity, right? Every single year, it continues to go up and up and up and up. And it gets to a point where we have so many people that don't have the money to afford it, where we are in this situation where they have shitty to no insurance, right? And so how do we take care of the people that are getting older, or the younger generation just in general, from the younger generation to the boomers, right? I have no idea what the answer is.
I know the math is kind of stacked against us with, what we have with generations that are going to be retiring, and then, with even a lack of people producing and putting into that system to take care of, we're top heavy on retirees.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a significant problem. It is a problem, and it's gonna continue to grow. Like I don't know if we have a solution to that.
I don't think that you and I can figure out that solution, but maybe you, but definitely not me.
No, I mean, nothing's changing.
No,
we're doing the same shit, so it's going to continue to be a problem.
Yeah, 100%, and it's insanity. I mean, I fucking hate to say this, but the baby boomer generation is the one that created all these fucking problems, and the generations before, right? And now they're getting older, and meaning we have to take care of them. Like, and it's just like, what do? We can't just say fuck them, right? We can't say fuck you to anyone.
Well, yeah, I don't think we should ever say
no, definitely not. No, definitely not.
I think I think there's some positive data that we can look at as well, and that's that you look at the poverty level worldwide and hunger, and that's come down a significant,
Absolutely.
So I think along the way there's and we look at our technology and just controlling disease.
Yes.
And look at what we're doing with CRISPR and being able to eliminate certain genetic deficiencies.
Absolutely.
And but I agree. Something's got to change with the system.
Of course, the system is definitely broken. But just like you said, we are. When just like anything, you kind of get pushed into this corner. You either fight your way out or you stay in that corner, right? And I do see people like I believe his name's Boyan Slat, created the ocean cleanup crew system, right? Mm-hmm. And his goal is to clean up the Great Pacific Garbage Patch within 5 years, or half of it, right? I don't want to get my numbers off, but he's been able to create this device that is definitely getting all the plastic out of the ocean, right? Now, we have tons of people, this millennial generation, that is really freaking blowing my mind away with
just
so
conscious.
many. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I do think that we're on the verge of things changing. And it wasn't like, fuck you to the baby boomer generation. Never.
Yeah, right.
Fuck them.
Eat my dust, bitches.
Fuck you guys. No. That's definitely not what I meant. But it's just that the point I was going to get at is that that generation before us that did create a lot of these issues, right? Yeah. And they're getting older. But then we have this generation, our generation, my generation, that is really being health conscious and really looking outside of the box and really trying to look at the world in a new way. So I do believe that there is this turning point, and we might have, all of these issues, but I hopefully, or at least I'm an optimist, that we're going to solve a lot of them as time goes.
Yeah,
so,
no doubt. The unfortunate part is I think we tend to solve a lot of problems when it's hit critical mass.
Yep.
Is that true? I don't think we'll ever kind of dig our way out of, certain ways where we've damaged, created damage. However, I am hopeful that we can solve some of the more significant challenges that are really posing a threat to our existence.
Absolutely,
because that's
So just like you, I'm optimistic. I'm hopeful that the tide will turn. Obviously, all the problems are not going to get solved, and yes, we do wait until it's about to be too late, or sometimes when it is too late. But I do hope this dynamic shift is happening so that some of these really key issues do get solved. Getting back to your story, so after you had your first kid, what happened to you next? How did you end up in California?
Yeah, so we, in Pacific Northwest, a lot of weather, and I loved it. I consider that, home almost more than Southern California, although I can't complain. Like, it's beautiful down here, but I just, there's something about, and maybe part of it was my roots in,
for sure,
growing up in the country, but I lived kind of not in the country. I mean, I lived in a suburban neighborhood, built a house there, but it was also like I lived on, I think almost a half acre. And so there's land, you could see the stars at night. And I remember in the summertime just looking up at the stars, and, I try to remind myself like how, to try to stay connected to nature. And I remember looking up at the stars almost every night and being like, this is why I moved here.
Yeah,
you know,
for sure. It's breathtaking if you've never seen it.
It is,
before.
yeah. And you know, and even in the winter when it's raining, I mean, I don't really let it bother me. I kind of tend to like the cooler weather.
For sure.
However, with a, you know, mom with her first child, who, you know, definitely needed some more attention earlier on just because of his, you know, medical issues, minor, but, you know, I remember his reflux was just awful and so painful for him, you know, just because his gut wasn't developed enough and esophagus to be able to prevent the acid from coming up. So that was pretty, you know, pretty rough. But, you know, she kind of felt like she didn't really have a good support system. I had a great job, loved my job, was, you know, I don't say working too much, but, you know, I also she didn't have any help.
Yeah.
So I think for her, and understandably, just got too overwhelming. We had family back in California. So we decided to move back after a couple, you know, 3-4 years.
Nice.
Just, you know, for the family. And then
No, it makes sense.
Yeah.
It makes sense. It's at that point in your life where you had to make that decision, right? And you definitely made the right decision, or at least I like to hope. And looking at your life now, for as long as I've known you, definitely coming back. And if you wouldn't have come back, you wouldn't be sitting here today.
I mean, look, I'm kind of going back to that whole, you know, kind of create your own path. I mean, sometimes, you know, you're influenced by circumstances at play.
Of course.
But you know, if I were to look back at, you know, possibly having stayed, you know, I don't see how I would be any better off than I am now. And I feel like I'm, you know, orders of magnitude in a better situation than I would have been out there. So, you know, no regret, right?
For sure.
And who knows? It's hard to say that, right?
Of course. Right now.
Not a fortune teller, but, you know, I'm definitely happy with where I'm at.
Yeah, definitely looking at your life from that bird's eye view, right? So after you came back, you came to Santa Clarita first, or?
Yeah, so yes and no. Moved in with my mom.
Okay.
I'm 30. How old was I when I moved back? 32, I want to say.
All right.
Moved in with my mom with a child and my wife at the time.
Nice.
Because we were still trying to sell our house up there. The market was much different. I couldn't afford to buy a house at that point because I had my money locked up in the house we built. So sold that house finally after, I want to say, 5 or 6 months, and then ended up moving out of mom's house.
Out of mom's house, out of mama dude.
Out of mom's.
At 32.
32 years old, making it.
Yeah.
And moved to Santa Clarita. And one of the reasons we moved there is because my wife at the time, she had friends who lived up there with children. And it was also, we could get more bang for our buck out there, have a bigger house, big backyard for the kids, stuff like that.
Very nice.
So yeah, and that's, moving up there again, great decision, because that's how I met you.
Yeah, I know. It's just crazy.
I wouldn't be sitting here today had these things not transpired.
Exactly. It's pretty crazy. And then how long after when you moved back, first off, let me ask this. What company were you working at? What were you doing, let's just say?
So in Portland, I worked at a managed services IT consulting company. I was doing, strategic consulting for their clients at that point. And then when I came back, that's when I joined the company that where I ran their security practice. And that was a company called CalNet Technology Group in Chatsworth.
Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
And so that's what you were doing for them. When you moved back, what year was this?
I want to say 2012.
2012.
Came back in 2012, yeah.
Fucking awesome. Nice. And then you stayed with that company for a while. And you had your second kid.
Had my second child in 2014.
All right.
He was born in Mission Hills.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Mission Hills.
Fine hospital. Definitely a much easier experience.
Were you nervous?
Than the first one. Yeah, but we had also learned a lot since then. We had learned why she shouldn't have been able to just medically what was going on with her. It was a septic uterus, so it was basically her uterus was half the size that it should be.
Oh my gosh.
And there was no it was almost like pregnancy was almost unviable for her. So we got super fortunate with the first, and she had a surgery to fix the problem for our second child. So that,
Wow.
Yeah.
My mouth is like on the floor right now.
yeah. So it's, again, like look at our technology, and that is being able to identify that, fix it. And, we were able to bring another life into this world.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
They were able to figure out the problem, fix the problem, which then allowed you to have another kid without really any complications or.
No, it was,
Yeah. And how,
smooth.
how old's your son now?
Liam is 5 now.
There we go.
Yeah.
Seven and a 5-year-old.
7 and 5. Yeah. 22 months apart.
There we go.
Yeah.
Congratulations. So going through all of that, then I don't know, when did we meet? 2016, 2017?
We probably met somewhere around there. I would say 2016.
Yeah, around there. And I remember at the time meeting you, cutting your hair. I was really starting to get into cryptocurrency and blockchain technology. For me, it just like opened my eyes up in ways that I never knew possible. I mean, I really didn't understand finance. I really didn't understand money. And when, the phrase Bitcoin first, was shared with me, my friend Tyler Turner shared with me probably in 2015. I said, fuck that. What is that? Like, just like stupid money, right? And he goes, just buy some on Coinbase. And I was like, I don't know what the fuck that is. I was like, forget it, right? And so then, I don't know, 6 months later, he brought it up again. And then it was probably 2016, 2017 when he brought it up to me. And I just did it to shut him up, right? Really had no idea what it was. He goes, just throw $50 into it. And then I remember my money, my $50 turned to like 60, 75. I was like, what the fuck is this?
This is a magic
I was like, wait.
money machine.
I was like, wait a minute. You put a little bit of money in and it grows.
Where's the scam?
Yeah. Like straight up. And I was like, what the fuck is this? And then I started looking into Bitcoin and started really understanding about the financial, the financial reserve and, just how we print money out of pretty much thin air and how it used to be backed by, at this time, I mean, really leading up to this, I thought the dollar was backed by gold. I mean, you ask a lot of people like, yeah, it's backed by gold. And then you find out, Nixon in like 73, fucking threw that out the window. And so now our dollar is backed by literally bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, well, fucking
Backed by
Bitcoin.
promises.
Exactly. Promises, IOUs. And so then Bitcoin was created by Satoshi Nakamoto and then the blockchain. And I was like, what the fuck is that? And so I just started diving deeper and I was like, wait a minute, this isn't, like made by some government or owned by a government or like a single person. And then you find out, no, it's owned by the people, that decide to put into it and the miners and all of that. And we don't really have to dive deep into that, but it just got me really thinking about, my life and money and what it really meant. And then I started to learn about Ethereum and I just got really excited. And I remember talking with you and I don't know, it just kind of like, it clicked.
Yeah. I was super excited about it at the time. I had not, I don't think I had purchased any crypto when you and I were talking, but I knew people who had been holding crypto. And this was when the price was, I want to say, right around like it was $300 mark, somewhere around there. And then I remember it jumping right around that same time to like $700, and that kind of created a little buzz. But yeah, I have you to thank for my journey with crypto, and this was I want to say probably 2016, maybe 20. I don't remember,
around there. Whatever it is. I mean,
anyways, but it was interesting because had that event not correlated, you and I, but we made a fuck ton of money.
Yeah, it was fucking awesome. It was fucking awesome.
Just by, getting interested and excited about it at the right time.
For sure.
It could have always been earlier.
Yeah, I know you always think that always earlier, and I could have sold more and then bought back in. But it's a so they right. C'est la vie. And then I don't remember how it started, but I was like, I was watching all these YouTube videos and all this shit, and I was like, wow, I want to do the same thing, and then like the Gold Block Network was like this idea
that stemmed from like, creating education and letting more people know about, blockchain technology and cryptocurrencies. And I remember just talking with you, and you hopped on board, and where did it go from there?
So I think I think you and I realized, like, at a pretty early stage, right after spending an hour, together chatting while you're cutting my hair, that they're just our minds were like, when you put our minds together, like, beautiful things happen.
Absolutely.
Right? We had super interesting conversations,
awesome.
super interesting ideas. I could tell that just hearing about some of your past experiences, that you're not just an idea man, that you can also execute. And that brings me to an interesting quote that I remember hearing. This has always stuck with me, and it's ideas are a dime a dozen.
Yeah.
But it's those who can execute are the ones who are going to be successful, right? It comes down to execution at the end of the day.
So much.
And so, I think that the combination of us realizing, who we are, our personalities, and just, having a great time together, no matter what, having, amazing conversations. Yeah. I think you were you're an amazing educator. An amazing person, but where I think you do just a phenomenal job is you can connect with people, and in a way that is like helping them, almost like mentoring them and educating them in an amazing way. And I think that's where you got the idea. You're like, look, Bitcoin is, it's a revolution. Yeah. Blockchain is a revolution. Like, this is, I think it's, important for us to, number one, be involved in this just because it's such an exciting realm, but be involved in a way that contributes and help educates people, and so I think you brought that idea up to me, and I'm like, sign me up, dude. What could I do?
Like, fuck it, let's do it. Let's do it.
Yeah, so that was fun.
It was. And I remember filming our first video down in San Diego. Man, we got so into it. We got all like the poster boards out, and we got our camera, and we like did all these different like unique shots, and built this whole just like introduction.
Scouted the town.
We scouted the town. Like, we were like real deal producers, or at least we thought at the time. But it was so much fun, just really going through that process, putting it together, and just fucking doing it, right? And although it didn't work out, we can still look back at those videos. We can still look back at that time, and be really proud of ourselves, right?
It worked out. It was a project.
It did.
We did a project for a period of time, and I don't think we were going in there trying to make $1 million.
That is true. That is true.
Or $1 billion these days. But it was, it was a great experience.
It was. We set our mind to it, and we fucking did it, right? Yeah. And still to this day on my Facebook, we get like dings, like 2 views, 10 views, 20 views on the videos. And
so for your listeners, the premise is we were putting together episodic series on both kind of the history behind what is Bitcoin, why is it so important, and then also just having kind of update conversations around what's going on, why is this important, what does this mean. Absolutely. And then another side track where it was how to convert your 401k to Bitcoin, which is something that I did.
Absolutely.
And I'm very thankful that I did that.
For sure.
And I don't think we got too far down that track before, I think both of our lives got a little too busy on a personal front, but yeah.
But it was still phenomenal.
It was pretty cool.
And it's so crazy how easy these things are now, and like just the wide reach of the whole community. And yes, it fucking shot up to like $20,000 and then came down and hit like 14 grand in 2019, went to like 7 or 8, whatever the hell it is right now, right? But it's not. This isn't something that's going to be this short term, make you fucking a millionaire. This is a long term idea of putting the putting finances back into your own pocket, being able to really be in control of your own money. Yeah. And I do believe that the generation after me, Generation Z or whatever the heck they're called, they're the ones that everything is digital.
everything they do.
Yeah.
You know, millennials.
That's all they know.
That's all they know. Millennials grew up before it and into it, right? Where this generation, this is all they know, right? And as you have places like what's happening in Hong Kong, in Syria, Venezuela, all these just financial catastrophes, and just being able to be in control of your own self, Zimbabwe, right? This idea of Bitcoin and putting money on the blockchain, it will be whatever it is. If it's Bitcoin or something that we don't even know right now, there will be something in the years to come.
Well, what are some of the key points? To me, it's a third of the world is unbankable, right? Roughly,
Absolutely.
Give or take,
Absolutely,
right?
yes.
And so what this does is it's something that anyone can save, have their own money. Then you have remittance, right?
Yep.
No intermediary, no fees, no conversion. Like you have you send Bitcoin from point A to point B, and it retains, nearly all its value.
Absolutely.
Minus, gas fees, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then you have the fact that it is a what would you call it? It doesn't depreciate.
Oh my God, why am I drawing a blank? Deflationary.
Deflationary currency, yeah.
Like,
so, no one can print more. In fact, it's a limited resource.
21 million.
21 million. Many of those are already lost, making it probably that much more valuable, if it is looked at in the right way. And then at the very end of it, at the stem of it, you have blockchain, which is just this powerhouse of a thing that can, solve so many problems. And whether or not Bitcoin is going to be a form of currency, whatever.
Blockchain is here to stay.
Blockchain's here to stay. I do think Bitcoin, I still believe in Bitcoin as a store of value because of that, it's a deflationary currency.
Oh, for sure. I'm a huge believer in Bitcoin. I still invest a little bit every single month into it. Still holding on to mine. And that being said, it's like 1/3 of the bank is unbanked, or 1/3 of the population is unbankable. It's like, what the fuck, man?
Right.
These microtransactions.
Let's serve everyone.
Absolutely.
Right.
People don't realize that, a lot of these people, when we say 1/3 of the world is unbankable, that's people living off of less than $2 a day, right? In some places, $2 a week, $2 a month, right? And if you can't, the cost of a transaction on like a, Visa on 40 cents is just insanity, right? It's not even worth it. And a lot of times you can't even do transactions that low. Well, what does that mean for people that live off of less than $2 a day? So we need to be able to find ways that really puts the power back into the people. And the thought of a deflationary currency, well, the US dollar, they print millions and millions and billions of it, every single year. So when you're talking about something that there's only 21 million of them, and that's all there'll ever be, and then some of them already been lost. Well, what does that do long term, right? For one individual Bitcoin, and a lot of people don't realize it's like you don't have to just invest or buy one Bitcoin. You can buy
Fractions.
You can go on the Square Cash app and buy like $1 worth of Bitcoin, right? So these microtransactions that really open up the doors to these people that are unbankable. Well, now this can really change the paradigm, because once you include these people into this free market system that we have, well, what does it do then? It gives them possibility. It gives them the chance to really be a part of this whole ecosystem. And they've really not been served for a very long time. Right. But with the financial tech revolution that is happening before our eyes, I do believe that these people will become more and more included. And so for me, cryptocurrency and blockchain technology revolutionized my whole entire life. I never thought about even stocks. I never thought about really, saving other than like cash and, different places to put my money so my money makes money.
It tuned you into the world of, investing for your future.
Exactly. Yeah. Education, man, is the key. And we're not teaching, kids. I never learned this from in high school.
Yeah, but yet you learn, history, which don't get me wrong, history is important.
It is, but
however, like, come on, like there's, I think
there history is very important, but like there's just so many things that they teach in school that you get to a point when you're in 10th, 11th,
Life
12th
skills.
grade, you have to be teaching people life skills.
Yeah.
It's like, sure, all of this other shit is important, but if they do not even know how to, I was going to say balance a checkbook, but checkbooks are slowly but surely getting thrown out the window. If they don't know how to
Do their taxes.
invest for the
Yeah.
future, make a fucking, do their laundry, fucking
Right.
make food, freaking put things up on the wall, whatever the heck it is, right? Really get
And
people
not rely on YouTube to teach people
exactly.
these things.
But fuck, man, YouTube's amazing.
Guys.
But why should no? But you're being
Yeah.
serious. It's like, why do people have to rely on YouTube? These young kids, if we can't get them ready and prepared for the real world,
Yeah.
what else are we going to do?
Yeah.
And you have other countries, like the Netherlands, when they turn 16 years old, they go to a trade school for 2 years and they go stay like on, I don't know, like dorms or things like that. And I could be wrong about that, but I know once they hit 16, they do go to a trade school for 2 years before they go into a university. And this trade school does set them up for real world ideas, real world tactics, and gets them prepared so that when they do go into a university, they know how to live and be prepared for their life. I had a good friend, I have a good friend, Olivia. She's from the Netherlands. And that's exactly what she was talking about. And this is just what we're lacking in the United States of America is really educating these kids for the real world, because there comes a time and a place where, history and English and math and science, they're very important. But if they don't have the basic necessities and tools to become a real human being, all those things can get thrown out the window.
Yeah, I think just generally as a culture, we are really good at addressing. This goes back to fixing problems when they're at a critical mass. Is addressing problems at the surface, and we're not really good at looking at fixing root cause.
Yep.
And so things like investing more in our teachers and our education system versus whatever it is. I don't want to get into a political conversation necessarily,
but it's true. That's fine.
If we were as I think as humans and maybe even culturally, we are not as good as some other cultures as really kind of making long-term investments into some of these larger issues, which they're not going to get fixed immediately.
No, they're definitely
but we're not even addressing them at all. Right
no,
now,
if you don't address it,
as far as I'm aware.
No, that's a fact. And so we just have all these things thrown at us right now, and it's where is the U.S. going? In my opinion, if we don't get this shit taken care of, like if we don't really start investing into our teachers, into creating new ways to get our younger generation ready for the real world and so many other things, you have different cultures like China, for instance, that people say this all the time, but they're going to become the dominant force.
Oh, no doubt. So they own 5G.
Yeah.
They own the global, and that's information. They own information now. I believe China is our single biggest threat. I believe that people should start learning Chinese.
Absolutely, Mandarin. No, but it's true.
Yeah.
No, but you're not joking.
I think, I think there's going to be. I think the next 10 years are going to be a very interesting shift for Americans.
Yes.
Because I think we're going to start to see in significant ways, us kind of shift away from a global power to, competing, right?
Yeah.
There's going to be other people grabbing that steering wheel pretty soon.
For sure. I mean,
they already are. But
absolutely. You have China creating their own crypto, right? Their own digital currency. Why? Because they want to bypass the U.S. dollar. Right now, the world's reserve currency, if you will, is the U.S. dollar. And by creating this digital currency, well, now allows them to transact with other countries that they wouldn't normally, do in the way they would, because they would be using the U.S. dollar. So if they can use a digital currency that's backed by the yuan, or I think that's how you pronounce it, then you start to get these other countries thinking, okay, well, I don't need the U.S. dollar. I can start using this. And you have China investing into, you have them investing into like African countries, building roads, really helping build their infrastructure, building roads that lead back to China.
Right.
building
trade.
that exactly
Yeah.
building that road from them to Iran. My thought process behind that is like, back in the 60s when we built the interstate highways and we built, the roads that led the east to the west and the west to the east, we had this huge dynamic change in America that we had not seen up until this point, really building up towns and cities that if there wasn't any type of transportation routes, they would have never gotten built up. So you take someone like China who's investing into these African countries, investing into building that road to Iran.
Growth is going to just
skyrocket for them, for China. And then what do you have 50 years down the road? Who are they going to back when some shit goes wrong? The people that invested into them or the country that said me, right? Yeah. So, there's this huge paradigm shift. And even getting back to your point with 5G is the future, right? And if we don't have any control on that, well, who controls the information? I don't know. You would know. Yeah. You would know more than me. So, before we talk a little bit about cybersecurity, looking back at everything in your life, did you always know that you wanted to get into cybersecurity?
I think I was always interested. I remember, when the internet was just starting to become popular. I remember having, being into computers pretty immediately. I loved to, as a kid, take things apart and put them back together.
There we go.
And with computers, and then you add the internet to that, there was just all of a sudden this just kind of, to me, really interesting world where I discovered if you knew a little bit more than most people, you could manipulate the system a little bit, right? Yeah. You could do things that it almost, you almost felt, you had this feeling of like power almost, right? Where you were a, expert and could kind of just own this space that other people were also involved in. And I wouldn't ever consider myself a hacker. I'm not. I never really went down that road too much. I don't think I had the patience, to be a developer. And that's where I think, you really need to focus a lot. You need to be a pretty good, software writer, and understand, computer code and language to be a proficient hacker.
Yeah.
But I got really interested in just the, connecting and controlling your environment at basic levels. And I remember, having a computer in my room and staying up all night, just playing around and exploring. And I think this was even before, America Online and doing, bulletin board systems. And
that's incredible.
Then you download stuff, I don't want to, make any statements that I did illegal things. But it was, I had a blast, and then I got together with, a group of friends, and then we were, at a certain point, look, we were teenagers. So we
for sure
caused a little havoc on, America Online and did, some silly stuff with credit cards. I won't go into any more detail. But so I was just always kind of interested in that aspect. And then as I got older, in high school, I wasn't, I wasn't a very focused student. I generally did pretty well on tests, and so I got by. But I was, also I think immature a little bit during high school, and wanted to skateboard with my friends,
for sure.
And like many people. But I wasn't a disciplined student during high school. Now that after high school, I went to community college because I wasn't a very disciplined student, so that was kind of my best option. I don't even think I took the SATs. I know I didn't take the SATs. It wasn't until probably a year and a half after I was in community college that my mom looking at, she wants to, I was, living at home, going to community college. She's like, hey, there's this trade school, ITT Tech, and I was still interested in computers, but not spending a ton of my time there. I'm like, okay, that sounds interesting. Like I'll check it out. Cause when you don't have purpose, I didn't have purpose. I wasn't full. So I started going to school almost immediately after, got a job at a startup company. This is a really interesting company. They made touchscreen computers that got put in the cockpit of aircraft.
Wow.
That digitized everything. So you'd have your, when you're flying into airports, your approach plates and your maps and telling you what angle, what runway, all that stuff, which traditionally was paper. And you have this big book you have to carry around that gets updated every 2 weeks. So you have to go into the binder, you have to replace the updates and all that stuff.
Oh my gosh.
And, and so these things are becoming digitized. Your logbooks, in-flight weather, lightning strike, I think costs, an airline $11,000 every time they get hit with a lightning. So if they can avoid weather, and lightning strikes, it saves them quite a bit of money.
For sure.
And so when I started with this company, I was going to school, for, I think the program was an associate's degree for computer networking. And I got to set up their whole network. I was their, technical support. I would configure all the machines. I would ship them out. I was operations. And then the company, grew. We started developing our own hardware. So I was working with the manufacturers, doing all the specs. I dabbled in sales a little bit, got to travel to, we were pitching American Airlines for multi-million-dollar deals. I got to participate in that. And I was pretty green. I was, in my young 20s, and this is just still going to school full time. And I was working. So I was going to school at night full time. And working, a good 60, sometimes like 70 hours a week. So I was killing myself, but I had purpose. Like I really enjoyed it. And this was, I think, my first, what I would call career, right?
Yeah.
Prior to that, I worked at Macy's, worked at Pickup Sticks.
Nice.
For a brief time period. Could only sustain, coming home smelling like cream cheese wontons and Szechuan.
So tasty.
But yeah, so this is my first kind of career, and there's always still an interest of cybersecurity, although, I was mostly focused on just kind of the setting up business systems and email servers and, domain controllers, and I was kind of learning that same stuff. And so after the associate program ended, they had just developed a information system security program. So I actually got my bachelor's degree with a focus on cybersecurity.
That's incredible.
And coming out of that program, I was still doing a lot of, I think at the time then when I graduated, I was still working at that first startup company. They eventually went belly up because iPads came out and completely destroyed their business.
Yeah.
$8,000 computer no longer made sense.
Not at all.
So
was that while you were there?
No, I left that company. I left the company before they went belly up, but I did have a significant amount of stock that, I was sad to see, turn into dust. But that's all right. Right. That was my first job. Like, what am I, I can't expect to become a millionaire on, my first round.
But it would have been so nice.
It would have been so nice. I totally agree. So, so I, after I left that company, kind of joined up with a buddy of mine who was doing residential IT services. With my experience in business systems, I'm like, let's help build, let's help build the business and get more into business customers. And so I did that for about a year before a business then bought us out and had me come on to lead, to do that same thing for them.
Very nice.
Yeah. So this was, again, this is my second kind of startup experience, right? At a pretty young age. Did that for a while. And that's when I decided, basically ran a, managed services company, a small one in Orange County. I think we were only about 6 people by the time I left. And that's when, I didn't have kids and I'm like, wanted to try something new, get out of Dodge. And that's when I moved to Oregon with my wife at the time, leaving that company and joining another, larger managed services company, IT services company.
And how old were you then?
29.
29.
Yeah, it's 29.
How old were you when you had your first kid?
32.
32. There we go. Yeah. It's perfect age.
Yeah.
It
is what it is.
For sure. Absolutely.
I think it's a good age because I'm, I think I can be a rad dad, right? I'm stable, and I have the patience and the mental aptitude to give them the best life, which is my number one goal.
Oh, for sure. So. Do you wish you had kids younger?
No, I mean, no regrets. I wish, life didn't go as planned, right? I wish I would have had children with someone who, I could still grow with. I mean, who wouldn't, right?
Of course.
And it's unfortunate, but at the same time, it's, I love my life. I love how I'm set up right now.
And you're in a good position now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, going through all of that, you went through the divorce as a kid, you've gone through your own divorce, but knowing and understanding that it was the right decision, right? Yeah. And it is unfortunate that you can't grow, but who knows what the future holds for you, man?
Right.
Right.
Yeah, you never know.
Absolutely. And you're, like you said, you're a rad dad. So, and it's true. You're a rad dad. You're fucking awesome.
My little pat on the back. But it's I do take a lot of pride in, they're I think my biggest project, my biggest challenge, they're my biggest business that I have to make the most successful, out of everything. And it's that's my personal challenge.
Fuck, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I want more people to look at their kids like that. What you just said hit the nail on the head. As they grow older, how important is teaching them about cybersecurity?
I mean, I don't think as long as we have technology, it's going to be an issue. That World War III is going on, with, not missiles and rockets, but ones and zeros.
Yes.
We have nation states attacking everyone. China, North Korea, Russia are probably some of the top, threats right now. For Iran has a pretty sophisticated, program as well. I think it's always going to be an issue in some way, shape, or form. And so, which brings me to what I'm doing right now, and that's I work at a company called Ningio, and we do security awareness training. And the best way I'd like to describe it is we make cartoons to educate people how not to get hacked.
There we go.
When you look at the statistics, I think it's over 90, maybe 93% is the last statistic. And 93% of breaches, human factor 93% was the reason. Yeah. And so, people are not hacking systems. I mean, they still are, but they're essentially, the target is people, right? That's the attack vector is people. Social engineering, email scams, financial scams, wire money fraud, business email compromise, getting someone's password and, causing havoc. And so the company I'm working with, and this was kind of my, what led me here is when I was running my own company, one of the things, and actually before that, I'll back up. When I was doing just IT, supporting businesses, they would get hacked, right? And 9 out of 10 times it was because, someone opened up an email, clicked on a link, and launched ransomware that locked all their systems.
That's
or someone wired money because they got an email that looked like it came from their boss, and it was an urgent email, and they did it just out of human nature. We are gullible creatures. I am in that same category,
for sure.
Right? Yeah. I'm not going to suggest that I'm not gullible, but and so going through that and seeing kind of it's a devastating process for a business and for the people who are involved.
Yeah.
I can share some personal stories where in one case, a company almost lost $10 million.
Holy shit!
In a hack. Another company lost 147 unrecoverable, $250,000 unrecoverable, and there are people who wired money following instructions, what they thought, and then I mean, how would you feel as being responsible for potentially companies go out of business? I just read a story. It was was it a manufacturing company somewhere? I don't remember the details, but they got ransomware and their systems were locked for long enough where they shut the doors, and 30 employees are now don't have a job.
It's that serious.
It's that serious. Yeah. I mean, it is a matter of livelihood, and so seeing this in almost on almost a regular occasion like, what's why is this happening? And my founder and CEO of Ningio, Zach Schuler, he saw that as well, having, seen it through the same lens of running a managed services company. And, when you look at the statistics and realize that, you have, the problem is people are not properly trained to prevent attacks, and hackers are targeting people. So he started this company, and in 2015, he solved, basically a couple core problems with how, why this is such a problem today. The first is the human attention span, right? We have, I think the human attention span is down to 6 seconds from the last study, which is, less than that of a caterpillar.
That's insane.
Yeah, a caterpillar's attention span is, I think, 8 seconds. And then, and so the pundits say social media is to blame, right? I mean, we all know that.
Yeah,
it's actually rewiring our brains. There's even studies coming out saying that millennials entering the workforce in, I want to say 2024, they are going to have a 2 to 4 second attention span. So when you look at training that's lecture based, telling you not to click on this is what a phishing email looks like. It's not working. Clearly, it's not working.
Not at all.
The second problem is that, hackers are innovating every day and coming up with new threats. So, coming up with new content all the time. And one of the things that we do is we release a new episode every 30 days that stays, it's top of mind, it's new, it's fresh, it's covering a real significant breach or scam that has, happened recently, so people can, kind of relate to it, right? And then the other issue is frequency. I mean, I think, a lot of companies, they look at their cybersecurity training program, and traditionally they take 45 minutes once a year, and that's it.
That's it.
And they're required to do that for compliance reasons, right? They check the box. That's it. But that does nothing for someone who, number one, has to remember something. And number two, has to be mindful of it every single second. They have to be vigilant. And be thinking of this, and almost, you and I have we have an identity. It's who we are.
Absolutely.
And I think most people, they have this identity of physical security, where, you lock your door when you leave your house, you pick up your purse or wallet when you leave a restaurant, lock your car when you go to the grocery store. But what we don't have is a digital security identity built into us. And so one of the things that we're really trying to do is create a paradigm shift where, and so what we do is we make 3 to 4 minute, Hollywood style storytelling cartoons.
Wow.
And we release a new one every 30 days that, it's an engaging story. And there's a single teachable moment and attack vector that we focus on that is, again, relevant and pulled kind of right from the headlines. Through delivering, with frequency, keeping it top of mind, keeping it engaging and interesting, we feel we're making a pretty big impact in, not only making cybersecurity fun and engaging for people who don't really, let's be real, like they don't care about it. They want to get their paycheck and their, and by creating frequency and not having it a one-time 45-minute once a year deal, it's memorable.
For sure.
And there's a lot of other stuff that goes behind it that, it's a methodology that, makes it fun and engaging. Another cool thing that we do is, it's called family use rights. And it's almost like the social media effect. We feel like if people feel like it's an employee benefit where they can also share it with their family, because these same things affect, children, they affect,
everyone.
Home computers, they affect, it's all the same lessons that we need to kind of, again, have that digital security paradigm shift in our mind. And we feel that if we can give it, and we give it, our clients have it for free for their family, right? They can share it with their friends and family.
That's incredible.
And so they can talk about it around the dinner table. Hey, did you, see the last episode of, what did you think? Have you seen that threat before? And, maybe it doesn't happen in practice, but it has happened. And I think does facilitate for a more powerful,
Absolutely.
lesson, message, and then ultimately shifting to a new identity.
Absolutely. Stimulates conversation. I mean, what you guys have been able to do, just the thought of looking at this in a new way, right? If 45 minutes is the typical standard every single year, right? These companies do. But what you guys do is break it down into few minute segments, Hollywood style, micro learning. So really taking what you understand about the attention span, 6 seconds, right? Blowing it up to that Hollywood production style. So it's cool, funny, and engaging. And just a few minute sound bites, right? That can really shift where we're at, because our digital identity is not looked at as our physical identity, but we can lose just as much, if not more at times.
Well, our lives are digital.
100.
So we almost need to think less about the physical part of it as we grow into this. And what's interesting, we've done a lot of research on neuroscience and how people learn, and just cybersecurity and how people view cybersecurity. That has, really helped us develop and get to where we're at. We've even done, studies around, the use of comedy in cybersecurity, and why, what some of the, issues can be associated with that. And there's been a lot of interesting things. I think you mentioned that you saw that Explained series, how the brain
absolutely.
works. Even looking at that, and they talk about in your hippocampus, you have your amygdala and.
I know what you're talking about.
Anyways, I'm not a neuroscientist.
No.
But it's how people store, meaningful memories. And there's a couple different elements that need to be involved to do that. And we're trying to, create our content and our delivery around how the brain works, how people work, how the world works, which it hasn't been done before.
No, not at all. Not at all.
So, and we're growing pretty quickly. It's a really fun business to be in. I think I was telling you before the podcast, gonna fly out to London and Turkey at the end of the month to visit with some strategic partners.
That's
we might have an opportunity to grow with, and it's just. It's a fun business.
Really shifting the way that people think about cybersecurity. I mean, this is becoming more and more of an issue. My wife always makes fun of me because my passwords are so fucking long, and I put 2FA on everything, and I try to just really be on top of what I'm doing, where I'm going, just utilizing, a VPN, really simple things that we can do to help us out. What are some of the just most basic things that the everyday individual can do to make sure that they're staying safe on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, a couple things. I think you hit on some of those passwords. Length is key, right? Complexity, fine, but if you have a short, complex password, it's going to get broken way faster than if you have a long, non-complex password, like a passphrase.
Yeah.
I love going to Disneyland.
There we go.
Right. With spaces and stuff like that, if they allow it. And there's even websites you can go on, how secure is my password, and type it in and test, and it'll actually tell you with today's technology how long it would take to crack that password. And you go from it, at a certain point, going from 8 characters, which, I think can be cracked in, a matter of minutes, to 14 characters, 247 trillion years, right? I don't know if that's actually it, but it's, it's significant, right?
For sure.
Length is king. Multi-factor authentication, that's also anywhere you can use it, especially banks. But I think here's an important takeaway, and that's, text messaging, because we're seeing a lot of hacks where people take over someone's, a SIM card,
like SIM swapping,
and they can receive the text message. Not only that, we're seeing hacks that are a little more sophisticated, and people are actually creating a proxy website where you think you're logged on to your bank. You input your username and password. It forwards you to their 2-factor, and you put in the 2-factor that you've received, already. And then, but by proxy, a hacker's like watching this happen and has control of the screen. And, having a 2-factor app like Google Authenticator is key, right? Because text message is it's not secure.
No, not at all.
Our government even says don't use it. And, just good cybersecurity hygiene is, being mindful, looking at, don't open up an attachment if you don't know where it came from. Trust but verify, call, right? If there's any sort of financial transaction happening, I don't care what it is, do not, if it seems weird or if it's a significant amount of money, pick up the phone and call if it's been done through email or text message. Because, there's a lot of scams that are happening. A pretty popular one lately is gift card scam, where someone will send an email, and this actually happened to us, one of our newer employees. He was seconds away from falling victim to a gift card scam. And it's funny, we get targeted, for sure. The faster we grow. And this was a new employee, so they weren't, trained and up to speed. But what happens is someone spoofs an email from the CEO, and probably through LinkedIn, they saw that this person is a new employee. And because it was also around Christmas time, holidays, it was, I think, ripe for the attack. And what they say is, it comes from the CEO. Hey, can you do a special project for me? So they respond, yes. What do you need? I am, I'm about to walk into a meeting right now. I need you to buy me, whatever it is, 20, gift cards at, $500 each. And I'm going to give them to the employees for a gift.
Wow.
But I need this done in 1 hour. Right. So it creates a sense of urgency.
Yes, it does.
And so our new employee got this. They did their homework. They knew that he was a new employee. They knew who the CEO was. They, pulled on those heartstrings of, sure, someone being new to a company and wanting to, perform. And he got the corporate credit card, jammed it to Best Buy, and then and was at the counter, and he texted just because he knew the company that we were at. And I think he had seen 1 or 2 of our videos, so far. I mean, he was days in, right? Yeah. He was fresh. Texted our CEO and said, hey, before I do this, I just want to make sure that, you really made this request. And I mean, he was playing golf. Like I don't know if he would have been, he luckily saw the message and said, no, I definitely didn't send that. And so
seconds away
from falling victim. Yeah,
wow. Yeah. So it can even happen. It can happen to anyone.
Oh yeah.
And it happens all the time. It happens all the time. Yeah. And so those are just simple ways that people can be safe, right? Trust but verify, 2-factor authentication, not through text message. Use something like a Google Authenticator.
Get a password management app. Don't recycle passwords. A lot of times companies, like LinkedIn has gotten hacked, and all of a sudden a hacker has an email address and a password, right? And so what they're going to do is they'll, spray that password and email address across many, many, many sites to see, where they can get in if someone has reused the same email address and password, which I've done that. Yeah. But now I have a password management program where every password is unique, every password is long, and it's relatively easy to change through the app if I feel like I need to.
For sure, absolutely.
So you just have to remember that one password for that one app.
And that's that, right?
Yeah,
make sure it's long, right?
Right. Make sure
it's long. Yeah. Wow, that's these are great freaking tips, man. Because as we move more and more into this digital realm, I really hope that people start to take their digital identity as serious as they do as their physical identity, because you can lose everything.
Yeah.
And who knows what will happen, right? They drain your account of thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Happens all the time.
So what are you gonna do, right? And this is happening everywhere. Everywhere. What are some other things that you see in the future happening to companies, people, businesses? Like where is this really going? Are companies going to be more aware and use your guys' education system, or they can continue and use the 45-minute long method?
I think it's always a process whereby you have companies that, have leadership that understand the issue, and they implement, the right incremental changes to help. I mean, there's nothing's 100%, especially when you have nation states when they want to, they're going to get it. I mean, you look at like the political campaigns that have been hacked.
It's insanity, man.
You know, in the previous elections. You know, I bet you they're probably pretty secure. Well, maybe. I mean, there's a lot of temps, you know, going in and out of that. But when you have an adversary that's as sophisticated as they are at the nation state level, there's really not much you can do. It's just, you know, I think encryption is important, right?
Absolutely.
This is getting a little on the more technical side, but encryption is king when it comes to protecting your data. Personally, I do use cloud storage services, but it's all encrypted. So if a hacker gets after that, there's no way they're going to be able to get to the data because it's you know, using such a strong key that at least today can't be hacked. Quantum computing is interesting though.
Yes, it is.
Because the theory is that quantum computing is, you know, once it's at a level that can be, you know, in the hands of groups when it's not so expensive and it's one more widely available, you know, it's going to be so powerful that it can probably, you know, blow the doors off of most encryption standards.
Absolutely.
And even blockchain. And that's kind of an interesting, you know, conversation around what it's going to do to blockchain and what security mechanisms are going to be required to secure those assets. But so I think that's going to be interesting. I'm not sure, you know, I'm not an expert in that area. So I don't know as far as timelines go and what's being worked on and being done. You know, deep fake, that's another issue.
That's huge, man.
I think on a global level. And for the listeners, you know, what that is someone basically, you know, creating a fake video and or audio that is so real.
Yeah.
And they can basically make any person say anything they want. And I think all they need is a soundbite of like 10 words or something. I could be wrong on that, but it's a pretty minimal soundbite that then they can use to then, you know, fake a video.
Fake
and
whatever
look
they
at
want.
that on the political side, or even, competing companies wanting to like kill the stock prices of another company. You know, I mean,
it's insane. It's insane.
Yeah.
How do we prepare ourselves for that? Because if you have someone like Donald Trump or Barack Obama saying, you know, do this or do that, how does the everyday person know, well, that's really not him? If it looks just like it, if it sounds just like it, these companies are going to have to create some type of technology to counteract with that, because if we don't, I mean, everything from the political arena to you know, huge companies, things are going to get a little weird as it gets better and better. And I don't know if it's like 40 minutes or 40 hours or 40 words, but I believe it's 40 something, right? That's all they need, right? Let's just say it's 40 hours, right? All they need is 40 hours worth of video. A lot of people have a lot of video out on there, more than they could ever imagine. Right. So if that's all they needed, if that's all they needed, and they can create any single human being to say anything that they wanted, that's a really weird world. And so this deepfake technology, although it's pretty fucking awesome to watch, it is very scary at the same time.
Yeah, I think the threat level on this is pretty high going forward. And I think organizations are going to have to, you know, think about this. You know, I think first on, as with most cybersecurity threats, you know, I think the newer things, you know, get targeted for the highest reward. And so larger companies, you know, are probably going to have to combat this first. And certainly politics, it's going to be an issue. But, you know, I know a lot of platforms are developing technology, right, where these things may live, like social media. You know, I know LinkedIn and Microsoft, Facebook, you know, they're investing a lot of money into being able to, you know, combat, recognize, identify, and essentially block this. But, you know,
time will tell. Time will definitely tell.
Cat and mouse game.
Oh, always. For sure. You know, with cybersecurity, with the 2016 election that happened, with Russia, you know, intruding on our political elections, what do you think is going to happen this year in 2020? Do you think that, you know, the RNC, the DNC, we're prepared for things like that? Because it's fucking crazy, man. It's really crazy that, and I know that America has done some crazy ass shit too, and we're probably or definitely doing it to other countries, and just everything that we have done if you looked at the very short timeline that America's been around. But this directly impacted, a political election, right? And so what do we do to prepare ourselves? And it's just, I mean, to be honest, I don't think that we're prepared. Well, definitely time will tell.
Yeah, largely we're not. I think a lot of responsibility sits with social media.
Yeah.
And that's a very complex issue.
Fuck yes,
that we're not
is.
prepared to deal with, with Twitter, with Facebook, with LinkedIn,
Instagram, all that shit.
all these, TikTok even.
For sure.
Which I just learned about that one recently. My kids aren't old enough. But I mean, I think, I don't know where to start. It's a complex issue. But I do think that we need to figure out mechanisms where we can eliminate, threats of, promoting misinformation.
Yes.
And, kind of, the manipulation of, small and large groups of
For sure.
people. And so, so most people, that's how they communicate these days. Social media, that's naturally where I think, and I know that they're having these conversations.
100%.
On that same note, how do you foster, a platform that people want to participate in and also not, inhibit free speech?
It's so true.
And the sharing of ideas and, and then, people that, may not be in that category of, manipulate, but are close enough, right? It's just their agenda is their agenda, but it's not to manipulate, but it's their voice, it's their message. And who are we to say that they can't have a platform to speak?
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, it's a very complex issue. I wish I had ideas that I could bring to the table.
For sure.
On how to fix it. I really don't know.
No, that's totally fine. I do like what Twitter did, and I'm a big proponent for free speech, but they don't allow political advertisements anymore, right?
Yeah.
And so in one way, that's shitty because I'm a big proponent for free speech. But another way, I'm like, well, we kind of saw what happened in 2016, so let's just take the politics out of it, right?
Yeah.
We can have everything else, right? But then where does that stop, right? If we take the political aspect of it, well, then what happens if this idea happens, and then that idea happens, and then it's just kind of like this tsunami of these, CEOs that are the ones that are, controlling the conversation that is happening.
And I think unfortunately, our current system to educate voters on who these people are. I mean, these debates they're
insanity.
Ridiculous. They're just completely
fucking
ridiculous.
insanity. When you have commercials every 3 to 4 minutes, it's what the fuck, right?
It's not conducive, and they're not even talking about.
And then 15-second, exactly. These 15-second blurps, right? Commercials every few minutes. It's like, no, what happened to being able to have a long form conversation like you and I are just having right now? You really don't get to learn a lot about their thoughts, their ideals, and just kind of what makes them the right candidate. So it just then becomes a shouting match. And it's just, it's fucking insanity to me. This whole entire political landscape that we live in America right now is just a little crazy right now.
Yeah. I mean, I think that we have a problem with education and, and information and misinformation. So, what's happening is I think largely, people who they think they're voting for and why they're voting for them and what they're, they're not seeing the full picture. And I realize I don't as well. I'm putting myself, this is everyone.
Yes.
And it's because of the system that we live in. And so I think a lot of time needs to be spent on that. I do, think, eliminating, political. But I mean, if you look at the dossier on, Russia's approach to manipulating our election, I mean, it was just insane on how they targeted certain groups and created, these messages that would get people, mad that then, I mean, they're just truly, it was the design was just insane.
It was fucking terrible, and brilliant, but fucking terrible. And I don't misconstrue my, me saying brilliant. I mean, brilliant by how fucking
well thought out. Whoever thought of it, like it was just thought. My gosh,
yeah, it was human hacking.
Absolutely,
That's greatest.
And we just for sure at its greatest. This will go down in history books as till this point, the greatest hack that has ever happened.
Who's writing the book.
Yeah, it's so true though, man. And so I don't know, man. Cybersecurity for me it's a big issue, and I would not even be thinking about this stuff if I never got into cryptocurrency and blockchain technology. And so that's another thing that's really, going through that process has really opened up my eyes and ears to all of this. And I just want people to be more aware and be more conscious about their choices that they make online. Social media has many fantastic aspects, but it's also fucking crazy at the same time. And it's so new. Everything is just so new. All of this technology is so new. What, the iPhone's been out for like 11 years? Shit, it feels like MySpace was the other day, right? Tom was everyone's friend. And so all of this, and now these companies that, started out at these college level, projects are now controlling the world and our thoughts and our ideas and everything like that. And they're multi-billion-dollar corporations. So we really need to be thinking about our actions. And that's why, having you on here was really important to me, not only because of our friendship, but because, what you do, what you bring to the table and are able to share with, the listeners about simple ways that they can stay safe. And also, I also think what your company does is fucking awesome. It really hits the core of the way that we think now as a society.
Yeah. Well, I chuckle a little bit, and just because I've been in this industry long enough where I've been selling the, software and the data center stuff and the firewalls and the, and all the security platforms that are really expensive.
Yes.
And, at the end of the day, you still have 93% of breaches on account of human error. You could spend all the money in the world in the data center and blinking lights and, yet spend a fraction of the cost on your staff, on people using your computers and in training, and probably have, take a much larger bite out of the risk profile.
For sure. Absolutely.
And so that's why, and, I think I mentioned after seeing it so much, organizations getting hacked, I almost feel like this is, I'm participating with a company that is making a tangible benefit to society by doing something, and we're not the only security awareness training company out there. But I figure, I believe that we are doing it in the most impactful and powerful way. And as we continue to grow, we can continue to spread that. And so I have just a ton of, passion for, what we're doing and almost, fixing society a little bit.
For sure.
Right. And I mean, I know that sounds kind of cheesy.
No, but it's so true.
But just the devastation that, happens when someone becomes a victim.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So, some people will never recover from that emotionally or financially.
No,
right.
It's so intrusive.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
So.
It's terrible. And you have these hacks happening constantly. So, what you are doing is impactful. And I do believe it is companies like yours that really will make real change, because if 93% is human error, well, let's get that down to 83%, 73%, 63%, because what would that mean?
Incremental
change, just slowly.
Well, it'll force the hackers to come up with something, new, but great. It's a cat and mouse game, right?
Absolutely.
Let's close one door. If they want to try and open another, they're going to. We can't stop that.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Yeah,
they're going to constantly be innovative, and that's why you constantly have to be at the forefront.
We are also working on for 2020 something called Ninjio Home, and what that is for the 8 to 14-year-old demographic, and it's teaching kids about digital citizenship, right?
Yes.
Social media, playing video games and talking to strangers, online, using location services on your phone. And it's not just for the kids, it's also the parents, need to be involved so they understand. And I think largely, and these are, also look at generationally, kids are growing up on this. They're expected, all their friends are doing it.
Yes.
Were they properly trained about the risks? Probably for the most part, not.
No.
But we also need to educate the parents so they know what the risks are. I think oftentimes, parents or even anyone adopts a technology and they don't really understand the true risk. And I have a side story on that on a project I did many, many years ago that, kind of articulates that. But I'll get to that in a second. So Ninja Home is going to be content that's going to be targeted to delivered in kind of that same methodology that's fun, engaging,
love
but
that.
help kids kind of build a foundation.
I freaking love that. That was the question I was actually going to ask you is, what are you creating?
That's where it starts. Because that's, but when coming up with an identity of digital security, the younger you start, build that baseline,
Oh, for sure.
Have it grow, for life. So
Absolutely.
But anyway, interesting thing I did, and this was, I think my last year in school, everyone, they had to do their project, right? And mine was on wireless because at the time wireless was kind of a new technology. Many homes didn't have wireless yet, right? It was many, most of it was businesses. So what I did is and I was really interested in wireless when it first came out, as, I usually am with most kind of new cool technologies that I see as, game changer, right?
Sure.
Virtualization was one of them. I got, deep into, virtualization just because I thought it was such a cool technology. But with wireless, what I did was I got a laptop, a big omnidirectional antenna, big antenna, right?
Yeah.
So I could see lots of range. Used a program called, I think it was AirCrack or AirSnort, can't remember which one. But it basically, all it does is it just scans and finds and records wireless networks. And it'll tell me whether or not it's encrypted, meaning you need a password to get on. So I drove from Anaheim on the 5 freeway down to, I want to say Dana Point area. It's probably about, I don't know, maybe a 20, 30 mile trek. And on that trek, just from the freeway, I found, how many was it? It was roughly, I want to say 75 wireless networks that I collected along that route. And so most of those are businesses. It's the I-5 corridor. There aren't a ton of homes that I'm driving by. So these are mostly businesses. Out of those 75 networks, I think 15 were encrypted.
Oh my gosh.
15. And so largely, what happens is this new technology comes out. People see that it solves a business problem, but they don't really understand, the other risks and vulnerabilities, and so they turn it on. It works great, and that actually led me to my first kind of side business where I'd go around and in those areas off the I-5 freeway, put a card that says business IT services. We can secure your wireless so hackers can't get in, and started making money.
That's so cool, man. That's so cool. Wow. So you drove from Anaheim to Dana Point, scanning the internet. And to think there was only 75 back then, how many would you get now?
Yeah, I mean,
a lot
thousands.
Yeah, probably millions, right?
Yeah.
Everyone and their mama has wireless nowadays. But I mean, to have your Wi-Fi just open network, that's seems pretty insanity.
And these are businesses, right?
Yeah.
So there's
there's a lot that they can lose, right? And I'm sure there's a lot still, right? It's still to this day. So it's just really important to be thinking about all of these things. Where for your company, so 2020 is going to bring. It's going to bring the what is it called again?
Ninja Home.
Ninja Home.
So that's and then we're also opening up. We're doing content like HR based content because everyone, people. We're one of those companies where we do things kind of so cool and unique that we even have this like cult following. Like people love our content. I love our content. I mean, it's really
awesome.
cool. But a lot of people have asked us, hey, we have to do sexual harassment training. We have to do anti-money laundering training. We have to do anti-corruption training. We have to do, diversity training. Can you create in your style? Can you, do that? We'd buy it from you. So we're actually kicking off with that and launching our first
awesome
series on sexual harassment.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't want to say sexual harassment's awesome because it's definitely not. But it is awesome that you guys are going to take that same thought process for the cybersecurity and implement it towards that.
But, we're also adapting it for, the digital age we're in. I mean, sexual harassment can be, delivered in, now social media where, you can make colleagues quite uncomfortable by making comments in social media now, where that wasn't an issue back in the day. So we're going to be approaching, in the digital age, some of the new, topics that I think people need to be aware of.
For sure. Will they be in the same kind of few minute segments?
Yeah, same kind of style. They may be, slightly longer, but not by much. But it's same concept, Hollywood, stories, right? Hollywood story writing. And we do have a Hollywood producer who's, a minority owner in the company who writes all of our scripts. He's written Bill Haynes. He's written over 72 episodes of Hawaii Five-0 and CSI New York. And he used to be, or is, a forensic sheriff as well. So he's legit and, definitely a key to our uniqueness.
Yes.
And our success.
That's awesome. Now, if businesses and just people in general want to go and look more into this, into your business, where can they go?
So if Ninjio.com, Ninjio, you can, see some sample episodes on there as well. And
That's awesome, man. I really love everything that we've talked about today. And I know there's so much more, and this is not going to be the last time I have you on here. But it was really important to me, like I said before, to have you on in this first batch of podcasts. One, because you're a really good friend. You're my freaking brother. But also, there's just a lot that you have to share in your beautiful freaking brain, man. Everything from your story, I mean, everything that you've gone through, just kind of really understanding that when is the right time to move? When's that right time to take the next step? And not to be afraid. And then also to understand when to pull back. Because a lot of times we'll get caught up in our own shit and we just want to say, oh, fuck it, I'm just going to give it all. But even though that is the wrong decision, right? But just our pride and our ego gets to us, right? I find that really fascinating about you. Our stories of Gold Block Network and really understanding that and kind of everything that I learned from it, everything that you learned from it, psilocybin. I mean, just everything that we've talked about, it just really means a lot to me. And I want to thank you so much for having you on here today, man.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a pleasure. And, I could talk with you for days.
Yes.
That's
for sure. Like I said, this won't be the last time, but there is one last question I do want to ask you. Yeah. Is there one regret or any regrets that you have in your life?
No, I look at things that happen, good or bad, as, lessons and building blocks. I know it sounds cliche, but no regrets.
No, it's a lot of people lie to themselves.
Look forward. I think regrets is like it's like a rocking chair, right? You're moving, but you're not really going anywhere. Like, what's the point? Like, why fixate on it unless you're extracting a lesson out of it? But then that lesson to me is like, that's the most valuable thing you can get out of a failure is a lesson. Yes. It's more valuable than not failing, right?
100.
So failure's good. Adversity's good. Challenges are good.
Feeling uncomfortable is good.
Feeling uncomfortable is good.
In the right way.
100%.
But yes.
Yeah, 100%. It all helps us remember that, we got to keep motivated. We got to work. Life isn't easy, although, I think some people definitely, there's a spectrum of people having opportunity and not having opportunity. And,
for sure.
So definitely want to recognize that. And I recognize I've had a ton of opportunity, but Yeah.
Nothing's been handed to you,
No
man.
regrets, man.
No regrets, nothing. Yeah, man. Thank you so much for coming on here. I love you, brother.
Well, I love you too, man. Thank you.
I want to thank everyone for listening to Back to Your Story. Have a great night. Peace.
Bye-bye.